The fluorescent lights of the Atlanta Police Department's briefing room buzzed with their familiar hum as Lieutenant Sarah Collins adjusted the stack of case files on the table in front of her. Rain hammered against the windows, streaking the glass with silver trails that caught the glow of the city beyond. She glanced down at Max, who sat perfectly still at her side, ears forward, eyes scanning the room with the same vigilance he brought to every scene. "Good boy," she murmured, her hand briefly touching the top of his head. Max's tail gave a single thump against the linoleum floor. The room filled quickly. Officers shuffled in, shaking rain from their jackets, coffee cups in hand. Captain Morrison stood at the front, arms crossed, waiting for silence. Sarah felt the familiar pre-briefing tension, the weight of whatever case was about to land on their desks. "All right, settle down." Morrison's voice cut through the chatter. "We've got a lot to cover this morning, but first, I've got some good news." Sarah's attention sharpened. Good news was rare in this line of work. Morrison smiled, something he didn't do often. "Some of you remember Detective Derek Lawson. Worked major crimes with us until about 3 years ago. Well, he's back. Transferred in from Savannah, and he'll be joining the task force effective immediately." The door at the back of the room opened, and Derek Lawson stepped through. Sarah's breath caught for just a second. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she'd seen him walk out of this building, accepting a promotion that took him south to the coast. He looked the same, tall, broad-shouldered, with that easy confidence that had always made him good in interrogations. His dark hair was shorter now, touched with grey at the temples. He wore a charcoal suit that looked expensive, and his smile was as practiced as ever. "Thanks, Captain," Lawson said, his voice smooth. "Good to be back." Applause rippled through the room. A few officers stood to shake his hand. Sarah remained seated, her eyes on Max. The dog had gone rigid. His ears were pinned back, his lips pulled tight. A low rumble emanated from deep in his chest, not loud enough for most people to hear over the noise, but Sarah heard it. She felt it. "Max," she whispered, her hand moving to his collar. "Easy." Max didn't ease. His eyes locked on Lawson, tracking him as he moved through the room, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries. The growl deepened. Sarah's pulse quickened. In 7 years of partnership, she'd seen Max react to threats, to danger, to suspects trying to run. But this was different. This was personal. Lawson's eyes found hers across the room. He grinned, raising a hand in greeting. "Sarah! Been a while." She forced a smile, nodding. "Welcome back, Derek." He started toward her, weaving between desks. Max's body coiled like a spring. The growl turned into a sharp bark, loud, aggressive, unmistakable. The room went silent. Every head turned. Lawson stopped mid-step, his smile faltering. "Whoa. Easy there, Max. Remember me?" Max barked again, lunging forward against Sarah's grip. She held him back, feeling the raw power in his shoulders, the tension vibrating through his entire frame. "Max, heel!" Her command was sharp, authoritative. Max obeyed, but barely. He sat, but his focus never left Lawson, and the growl continued, low and constant. Lawson chuckled, though it sounded forced. "Guess he forgot who I am. We used to get along great." "He's never done this before," Sarah said quietly. She meant it. Max had never reacted to a fellow officer this way. Not once. Morrison stepped forward, concern etching lines across his forehead. "Sarah, you need to get him under control." "He is under control," she replied, her hand firm on Max's collar. "But something's wrong." "What's wrong is he's acting like I'm a suspect," Lawson said, his tone light but with an edge underneath. "Dogs can be weird after a long time, right? Maybe he's just being territorial." Sarah didn't respond. She was watching Max's eyes. They were locked on Lawson with an intensity she recognized, the same intensity he showed when he caught the scent of narcotics, of weapons, of danger. Morrison sighed. "All right, let's move on. Lawson, take a seat anywhere. Sarah, if Max can't settle down, you'll need to take him out." "Yes, sir." Lawson moved to a chair on the opposite side of the room, deliberately giving Max space. But even from across the room, the dog's focus didn't waver. Sarah felt the tension in the leash, the coiled readiness in his muscles. Morrison launched into the briefing, an arms trafficking case, suspected shipments moving through the port of Savannah and into Atlanta. The task force would coordinate with federal agencies, tracking suppliers and distributors. Standard procedure, high stakes. Sarah tried to focus, but her mind kept circling back to Max. She'd trusted his instincts more times than she could count. He'd found hidden drugs in false compartments that X-rays missed. He'd alerted to danger before suspects even showed their weapons. He'd saved her life twice. Max didn't make mistakes. After the briefing, officers dispersed, filing out into the hallway. Lawson lingered near the door, chatting with a couple of detectives. Sarah waited until the room mostly cleared before standing. Max rose with her, his eyes still fixed on Lawson. "Sarah, hold up," Morrison called from the front. She walked over, Max at her side. "Sir?" Morrison lowered his voice. "What's going on with your dog?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But he's never wrong." Morrison's expression hardened. Derek Lawson has an exemplary record. 3 years in Savannah, multiple commendations. He's here to help us crack this trafficking case, and I need everyone focused. If Max has a problem, you need to figure it out. Fast. "I will." "Good. You and Lawson will be partnering on this case. I want him brought up to speed by end of day." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Partnering? That's right. You know the details better than anyone. He's got fresh eyes and connections from Savannah. It's a perfect match." She wanted to argue, but Morrison's tone left no room for debate. Understood. As she turned to leave, Lawson appeared in the doorway. "Hey, Sarah, got a minute?" Max's growl returned immediately. "Max, quiet," she commanded. The growl stopped, but his body stayed tense. Lawson stepped into the room, hands in his pockets, deliberately casual. "Look, I don't know what I did to upset your partner, but I'd like to clear the air. We're going to be working together, right?" "Apparently." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Come on, don't be like that. We had a good thing going before I left. I was hoping we could pick up where we left off." Sarah studied him. 3 years ago, Derek Lawson had been her partner for 8 months. They'd worked well together, efficient, professional. He'd been charming, maybe a little too smooth, but good at his job. When the Savannah opportunity came up, he'd taken it without hesitation. No hard feelings, just career advancement. So why was Max acting like he was a threat? "We'll work the case," Sarah said evenly, "but I need to figure out what's bothering Max first." "Fair enough." Lawson gestured toward the dog. "Mind if I try something? Maybe if he gets used to me again?" "No." Her response was immediate, instinctive. Lawson raised his eyebrows. "No. Not until I understand what's going on." For a moment, something flickered across his face, irritation maybe, or something darker. Then the smile returned. "All right, your call. But we should grab lunch later. Go over the case files. I've got intel from Savannah that might help." "I'll let you know." He nodded, backing toward the door. "Good to see you again, Sarah, really." When he left, Max finally relaxed, his posture easing. Sarah crouched down, running her hands over his head, checking him over as if searching for an answer in his fur. "What did you see, boy?" she whispered. "What do you know?" Max looked up at her, his brown eyes clear and certain. He'd seen something, smelled something, sensed something. And Sarah Collins had learned a long time ago that when Max told her something was wrong, it was. She pulled out her phone, opening a secure notes app. She typed quickly, "Max, hostile reaction to Derek Lawson. No prior aggression to officers. Check Lawson's record. Savannah cases. Arrests, evidence logs. Something's off." She hit save and stood, clipping Max's leash to her belt. "Come on, partner, let's do some digging." As they walked out of the briefing room, Sarah glanced back at the chair where Lawson had been sitting. The room was empty now, rain still hammering the windows, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. But the feeling remained, the electric tension, the warning Max had given her. Something was wrong with Derek Lawson, and Sarah was going to find out what. The afternoon brought Sarah to the evidence room in the basement of the precinct, a sprawling space filled with steel shelves, cardboard boxes, and the faint smell of dust and old paper. Max followed her down the narrow aisles, his claws clicking on the concrete floor. She pulled up the digital database on one of the terminals, entering her credentials. "Let's see what you've been up to, Derek," she muttered. The search pulled up Lawson's case history from Savannah. 3 years' worth of arrests, seizures, and closed investigations. On the surface, everything looked clean. Commendations for breaking up a smuggling ring, recognition for a high-profile drug bust. Solid detective work, no red flags. Sarah scrolled deeper, cross-referencing evidence logs with court records. This was tedious work, the kind that required patience and attention to detail. But something Max had taught her over the years was that the devil was always in the details. An hour in, she found the first inconsistency, a drug seizure from 18 months ago, 50 kilos of cocaine, confiscated from a warehouse raid. The evidence log showed the full amount entered into the system, but the court documentation referenced only 48 kilos at trial, 2 kilos unaccounted for. Sarah's pulse quickened. She pulled up another case, an illegal weapons cache. The initial report listed 37 firearms. The trial evidence listed 34. She kept digging, case after case, small discrepancies, amounts that didn't quite match, evidence that seemed to shrink between seizure and trial. None of it dramatic enough to raise alarms on its own, but together... "Jesus!" she breathed. Max's ears perked up. He moved closer, pressing against her leg. Sarah pulled out her phone, taking photos of the screen. She needed more than this, but it was a start. If Lawson had been skimming evidence, selling it back into the black market, the door to the evidence room creaked open behind her. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm. Max spun, a growl rumbling in his chest. Derek Lawson stepped through the door, hands raised in mock surrender. "Whoa, easy, just me." Max's growl intensified. "What are you doing down here?" Sarah asked. Her voice flat. Lawson grinned. "Could ask you the same thing. Morrison said you were bringing me up to speed, but you disappeared. Thought I'd track you down. I'm reviewing case files." "Anything interesting?" She closed the terminal screen casually, turning to face him. "Just getting familiar with the details. You know how it is." Lawson's eyes flicked to the now blank screen, then back to her. For a moment his smile faltered. "Yeah, I do." Max barked once, sharp and loud in the enclosed space. The sound echoed off the metal shelves. "Max, quiet!" Sarah commanded, but she didn't move to calm him. She let the tension hang in the air, watching Lawson's reaction. "That dog really doesn't like me," Lawson said, his tone light but his posture stiff. "He's a good judge of character." The words hung between them, sharper than Sarah had intended. Lawson's smile vanished completely. "What's that supposed to mean?" Sarah met his eyes. "Nothing, just a fact." For 3 long seconds, neither of them moved. The evidence room felt suddenly smaller, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Max's growl filled the silence, low and dangerous. Then Lawson laughed, the sound forced. "All right, Sarah, whatever you say, but if you're going to be my partner on this case, we need to be able to trust each other." "Trust goes both ways, Derek." He nodded slowly, backing toward the door. "Yeah, it does. See you upstairs." When the door closed behind him, Sarah exhaled, her hand shaking slightly as she pulled it away from her weapon. Max pressed closer, his warmth grounding her. "He knows," she whispered. "He knows we're looking." Max's tail wagged once, a small gesture of agreement. Sarah pulled out her phone again, this time opening her encrypted messaging app. She typed quickly, "Need background check on Detective Derek Lawson, Savannah PD. Urgent. All case files, evidence logs, internal reviews. Something's buried." She hit send, the message disappearing into the digital void. Then she looked down at Max, whose brown eyes stared back at her with absolute certainty. "Okay, boy," she said quietly. "Let's find out what he's hiding." The rain had stopped by the time Sarah pulled her unmarked sedan into the parking lot of the Riverside District Precinct. Grey clouds still hung low over Atlanta, turning the afternoon light flat and colorless. Max sat in the passenger seat, his head tilted toward the window, watching the street with the same intensity he'd shown all day. Sarah killed the engine and sat for a moment, her hands still gripping the wheel. The encrypted message she'd sent earlier had bounced back with a simple reply. "Request received. Will take 48-72 hours. Be careful." 72 hours felt like a lifetime. "Come on, boy," she said, opening her door. Max jumped out after her, landing smoothly on the wet pavement. They walked toward the entrance together, Sarah's mind churning through the inconsistencies she'd found in Lawson's case files. 2 kilos of cocaine, 3 firearms, small amounts, easy to explain away as clerical errors or trial compromises. But she knew better. Max knew better. Inside, the precinct hummed with activity. Officers moved between desks, phones rang, keyboards clattered. Sarah headed straight for her workspace, a desk in the corner of the major crimes unit, positioned near a window that overlooked the street below. Max settled into his usual spot beneath the desk, his presence a constant weight against her foot. She'd barely sat down when her phone buzzed. A text from Morrison. "Conference room, 10 minutes. Lawson briefing task force on Savannah intel." Sarah's jaw tightened. She typed back, "On my way." 9 minutes later, she pushed through the conference room doors. The space was already crowded. 8 detectives, 2 federal agents, and Morrison at the head of the table. Lawson stood near the projection screen, a laptop open in front of him, looking relaxed and confident. Max entered behind Sarah, and the change in the room was immediate. Lawson's smile flickered. His hand paused over the keyboard. "Lieutenant Collins," Morrison said. "Good timing. Derek was just about to walk us through his connections in Savannah." Sarah took a seat near the back, Max settling beside her chair. She felt the dog's body tense, his attention locked on Lawson. "All right," Lawson began, clicking to the first slide. A map of Georgia appeared, with red lines connecting Savannah to Atlanta. "Over the past 2 years, we've seen a significant increase in arms trafficking through the port of Savannah. High-capacity weapons, military-grade hardware, coming in through shipping containers labeled as industrial equipment." He clicked again. Photos of confiscated rifles appeared on screen. AR-15s, modified AKs, crates of ammunition. Most of this hardware gets redistributed through Atlanta. We've identified 3 major distribution points in the city, all operating under legitimate business fronts. Another click. Addresses appeared. A warehouse in East Atlanta, a shipping company near the airport, and a pawn shop in Decatur. Sarah leaned forward, studying the screen. The information was solid, well-researched. If Lawson was dirty, he was good at hiding it behind competent police work. "In Savannah, we managed to intercept 2 shipments," Lawson continued. "Arrested 4 suspects, but the suppliers stayed hidden. They're careful, compartmentalized. We need to hit them in Atlanta, where the distribution network is more exposed." One of the federal agents spoke up. "What's the timeline?" "Next shipment scheduled to arrive in Savannah in 5 days. If we coordinate surveillance on the Atlanta distribution points now, we can track the movement and take down the entire network at once." Morrison nodded approvingly. "Good work, Derek. Sarah, I want you and Lawson coordinating surveillance on the warehouse. Start tomorrow." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "Understood." Lawson's eyes found hers across the room. He smiled, but there was something calculating behind it. "Looking forward to working together again, Lieutenant." Max's growl was almost inaudible, but Sarah felt it vibrate through the floor. The briefing continued for another 20 minutes. Logistics, team assignments, communication protocols. Sarah took notes, but her mind was elsewhere, turning over the details Lawson had presented. Everything sounded legitimate, but something felt off. The way he'd glossed over the arrests in Savannah, the lack of specifics about the suspects. When Morrison dismissed the meeting, Sarah was the first to stand. She moved quickly toward the door, Max at her heels, but Lawson intercepted her in the hallway. "Sarah, hold up!" She stopped, turning to face him. Max positioned himself between them, his body a physical barrier. "What is it, Derek?" Lawson glanced down at the dog, then back to her. "I wanted to clear the air. I know Max is giving you signals, and I respect that. But I need you to trust me on this case. Lives are at stake." "I know what's at stake." "Do you?" His tone sharpened. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're letting your dog's instincts override your judgment." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Max has better instincts than most detectives I've worked with, including you." Lawson took a step closer. Max's growl deepened, his lips pulling back to show teeth. "Easy," Lawson said, raising his hands, but his eyes stayed on Sarah. "I don't know what you think you found in those case files, but I'm clean. 3 years in Savannah, 0 complaints, multiple commendations. If you've got a problem with me, say it to my face." Sarah held his gaze. "I don't have a problem with you, Derek, but Max does, and I've learned to trust him." "That's not good enough. It's going to have to be." For a moment the hallway felt too small, the air too thick. Then Lawson stepped back, his expression hardening. "Fine. But when this case goes south because you're too busy chasing ghosts, don't say I didn't warn you." He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Sarah exhaled slowly, her hand moving to Max's head. "Good boy," she whispered. "You're doing great." Max's tail wagged once, a small gesture of acknowledgement. That night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, a mug of cold coffee beside her. Max lay at her feet, his breathing slow and steady. The apartment was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of the city beyond the windows. She'd been digging for hours, cross-referencing Lawson's Savannah cases with court records, evidence logs and arrest reports. The pattern was becoming clearer. Small discrepancies, always in high-value seizures, drugs, weapons, cash. Amounts that didn't quite add up between the initial reports and what made it to trial. But it was more than that. She'd found something else. 3 witnesses who'd been scheduled to testify in cases Lawson worked. All 3 had recanted or disappeared before trial. One claimed intimidation, but refused to name names. Another moved out of state with no forwarding address. The third simply vanished, listed as a missing person with no leads. Sarah pulled up the missing person report, studying the details. Marcus Webb, age 34, last seen 2 weeks before he was supposed to testify against a weapons dealer Lawson had arrested. The case had collapsed without Webb's testimony. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging! You're making a mistake." Sarah's pulse spiked. She stared at the screen, her mind racing. How did they know? Who was watching? She typed back, "Who is this?" No response. Max lifted his head, sensing her tension. Sarah reached down, running her hand over his fur, grounding herself. "It's okay, boy. We're okay." But they weren't. Someone knew she was looking into Lawson, and they wanted her to stop. She took a screenshot of the text, then forwarded it to her secure contact with a single message. "I need that background check faster. I'm being watched." The reply came 2 minutes later. "Working on it. Be smart. Don't confront him alone." Sarah closed her laptop, her mind spinning. Tomorrow, she and Lawson were supposed to start surveillance on the warehouse. Hours alone in a car, watching a building, with a man Max didn't trust and evidence suggesting Lawson was dirty. She looked down at Max, who stared back at her with those clear, certain eyes. "We'll be careful," she promised, "but we're not backing down." Max's tail thumped once against the floor. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the warehouse location early. The building sat in an industrial area of East Atlanta, surrounded by chain-link fencing and weeds growing through cracked asphalt. A few semi-trucks were parked in the lot, their trailers locked and silent. She parked her sedan half a block away, positioning it for a clear view of the warehouse entrance. Max sat in the back seat, alert and focused. Lawson arrived 10 minutes later, pulling up beside her in a dark SUV. He climbed out, carrying 2 coffee cups and a bag from a nearby deli. "Morning," he said, offering her a cup through the window. "Thought you might need this." Sarah hesitated, then took it. "Thanks. Mind if I join you? Easier to coordinate from one vehicle." She wanted to say no, but refusing would raise suspicions. "Sure." Lawson climbed into the passenger seat, settling in with his coffee. He glanced back at Max, who watched him with unblinking intensity. "Still not a fan, huh?" Lawson said lightly. "He'll let me know when he changes his mind." They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the warehouse. A delivery truck pulled up, and a worker emerged to unlock the gate. Standard activity, nothing suspicious. "So," Lawson said, breaking the quiet, "you've been with the K9 unit for 7 years, right?" "That's right. Must be tough. All that responsibility, relying on an animal." Sarah's grip on her coffee cup tightened. "Max isn't just an animal. He's my partner." "Of course, I didn't mean—" Lawson paused, choosing his words carefully. "I just mean dogs are unpredictable. They have bad days, get confused. You ever worry about that?" "No, never." Sarah turned to look at him directly. "Max has never been wrong. Not once in 7 years. So when he tells me something's off, I listen." Lawson held her gaze for a moment, then looked away, his jaw tight. Must be nice, having that kind of certainty. Another silence fell, heavier this time. Sarah watched the warehouse, but her attention was split, tracking Lawson's movements in her peripheral vision. His hands were steady on his coffee cup, his posture relaxed, but there was a tension underneath, like a wire pulled too tight. An hour passed, then 2. The warehouse showed minimal activity. A few workers coming and going, one delivery truck unloading pallets. Nothing that suggested illegal arms trafficking. Lawson shifted in his seat. This is going to be a long day. Surveillance usually is. Yeah, but at least when we were partners before, we could talk, pass the time. Sarah didn't respond. "Come on, Sarah. We used to be friends. What happened?" She kept her eyes on the warehouse. "You left, took a promotion in Savannah. That's what happened. And that's it? You're holding a grudge because I advanced my career." "I'm not holding a grudge." "Then what's the problem?" Sarah finally looked at him. "The problem is that my partner, the one who's never been wrong, doesn't trust you. And until I understand why, neither do I." Lawson's expression darkened. "You're letting a dog dictate your professional judgment. I'm letting a highly trained K9 officer with 7 years of flawless service inform my instincts. There's a difference." "Is there?" Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from her secure contact. "Preliminary findings on Lawson. Multiple evidence discrepancies confirmed. Witness intimidation suspected but unproven. Internal Affairs flagged him twice in Savannah. Both investigations closed without action. Be extremely careful." Sarah's blood ran cold. She glanced at Lawson, who was watching her, his eyes sharp. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine. Just Morrison checking in." She pocketed her phone, her mind racing. Internal Affairs had flagged him, twice, and both investigations had been closed. That meant either Lawson was very good at covering his tracks, or he had help. Max barked suddenly, sharp and urgent. Both Sarah and Lawson turned. The dog was staring out the window, his body rigid, focused on the warehouse. "What is it?" Lawson asked. Sarah grabbed her binoculars, scanning the building. A black sedan had pulled up to the side entrance, expensive tinted windows. Two men climbed out, both wearing suits that didn't match the industrial setting. "That's not a delivery," Sarah muttered. Lawson leaned forward, his expression shifting to something more focused. "No, it's not." One of the men carried a metal briefcase. The other scanned the area, then knocked on the door. A moment later, they were let inside. "Could be a buyer," Lawson said. "We should call it in, get a team ready." Sarah's instincts screamed at her. Something was wrong. The timing, the setup, it felt too convenient. "Not yet," she said. "Let's see what happens. Sarah, if that's a deal going down, we wait." Lawson's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. They watched in tense silence as minutes ticked by. Max remained alert, his focus never wavering. Then the door opened again. The two men emerged, the briefcase now in different hands. They climbed back into the sedan and drove away. "We need to follow them," Lawson said, reaching for the door handle. "No." Sarah's voice was firm. "We stay on the warehouse, that's our assignment. Sarah, they could lead us to—" "I said no, Derek." For a long moment, Lawson stared at her, and Sarah saw something flicker across his face, frustration maybe, or calculation. Then he sat back, his hands tight on his knees. "Fine, you're in charge." But the words felt like a threat. Sarah kept her eyes on the warehouse, her hand resting on Max's head. The dog's warmth steadied her, reminded her she wasn't alone. Whatever Lawson was hiding, she was getting close to it, and Max would make sure she didn't miss it. The warehouse surveillance stretched into a second day. Sarah sat in her sedan at dawn, watching the building through a light fog that clung to the industrial district like a shroud. Max slept in the back seat, his breathing rhythmic and steady, but even in rest, his ears twitched at every distant sound. Lawson hadn't arrived yet. Sarah was grateful for the solitude, the chance to think without his presence filling the car with unspoken tension. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her secure contact. "Full report attached. Encrypted file. Password is K9 Trust. Review before you confront anyone." Sarah's fingers trembled slightly as she downloaded the file and entered the password. The document opened. Pages of text and scanned documents, internal affairs reports, evidence logs, witness statements, financial records. She started reading. The first internal affairs investigation had been triggered by a complaint from a fellow detective in Savannah, allegations that Lawson had accessed evidence without proper documentation. The investigation had lasted 3 weeks before being closed with a notation: insufficient evidence to support claims, administrative error likely. The second investigation came 8 months later. A defense attorney had questioned discrepancies in evidence quantities during a trial. Lawson had been interviewed, provided explanations, and the investigation had been closed again. No evidence of misconduct, clerical errors corrected, but the financial records told a different story. Over the past 2 years, Lawson had made deposits totaling nearly $200,000 into various accounts, amounts that didn't match his salary. The deposits were irregular, appearing after major seizures and arrests. Small enough to avoid automatic reporting requirements, but large enough to add up. Sarah's stomach turned. This wasn't just skimming evidence, this was a full-scale operation. She scrolled further, finding witness statements from the cases where people had disappeared or recanted testimony. One name kept appearing in the margins, noted by the investigator but never followed up: Vincent Caruso, a known arms dealer with connections throughout the southeast. Sarah pulled up a separate search on Caruso. The man had been arrested twice in Savannah, both times on charges that eventually got dismissed due to lack of evidence or witness problems. Both arrests had been made by Derek Lawson. The pattern was clear now. Lawson wasn't just stealing evidence. He was protecting Caruso's operation, taking payoffs to make cases disappear, to let shipments through, to ensure the right people stayed in business. And now he was back in Atlanta, right in the middle of a task force targeting the same trafficking network. Sarah's phone rang, startling her. Morrison's name appeared on the screen. "Collins," she answered. "Where are you?" Morrison's voice was tight with urgency. "Still on surveillance at the warehouse. Why?" "We just got a tip. Major shipment arriving at the airport location tonight, 11 p.m. I'm pulling everyone off current assignments. I need you and Lawson there, with Max. This could be the break we've been waiting for." Sarah's mind raced. A tip, arriving just as she was uncovering Lawson's involvement. The timing felt wrong. "Who's the tip from?" she asked. "Anonymous. Called it into the federal task force. Details match our intelligence perfectly." "Sir, I need to talk to you about Lawson." "Not now, Collins. I need everyone focused on tonight. We'll debrief after we make the arrests. Understood?" Sarah wanted to argue, to tell Morrison everything she'd found, but something stopped her. If Lawson had help inside the department, if that's how his internal affairs investigations got closed, she couldn't risk tipping him off before she had irrefutable proof. "Understood," she said finally. "Good. Briefing at 1800 hours. Don't be late." The call ended. Sarah sat in silence, her mind working through scenarios. If this tip was legitimate, it was their chance to shut down the trafficking network. But if it was a setup, if Lawson was using the task force to eliminate competition or protect his own interests, they could be walking into a trap. Max stirred in the back seat, lifting his head. A moment later, Lawson's SUV pulled up beside her car. Sarah closed the encrypted file quickly, pocketing her phone as Lawson climbed out. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, his usually neat appearance slightly disheveled. "Morning," he said, sliding into the passenger seat. "Anything happen overnight?" "Quiet, but Morrison just called. We've got a situation tonight." Lawson's expression sharpened. "What kind of situation?" Sarah filled him in on the tip, watching his reaction carefully. He showed surprise, interest, but nothing that seemed forced or rehearsed. "Finally," he said when she finished, "a real break. This could take down the entire network." "Could," Sarah echoed, "if the tip is solid." "You think it's not?" "I think anonymous tips are convenient." Lawson studied her. "You don't trust anything, do you?" "I trust what I can verify." "And your dog, apparently." Sarah didn't respond. Max had moved forward in his seat, his attention locked on Lawson again, that familiar tension returning to his posture. Lawson noticed. "He's never going to warm up to me, is he?" "Probably not." "Why? What does he think I did?" Sarah met his eyes. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Something flickered across Lawson's face, fear, maybe, or anger, quickly masked. "You know what, Sarah? I'm starting to think this isn't about Max at all. I think you've got some personal issue with me that you're not dealing with." "This has nothing to do with personal issues, doesn't it? I left, took a better opportunity, and now you're punishing me for it." Sarah's jaw clenched. "You're way off base." "Am I? Because from where I sit, you've been hostile since the moment I walked back into that briefing room. Your dog picks up on your emotions, right? Maybe he's reacting to you, not me." The words hit harder than Sarah expected, planting a seed of doubt. Could she be wrong? Could her own suspicions be influencing Max's behavior? But then she remembered the evidence, the discrepancies, the missing witnesses, the deposits. "Max reacted before I had any opinion about you at all. she said quietly. He knew something was wrong the second you walked through that door. Lawson leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. Well, tonight we'll prove him wrong. We'll catch the bad guys, and maybe then you'll realize you've been chasing shadows. Sarah didn't answer. She turned her attention back to the warehouse. But her mind was elsewhere, planning. She needed proof, something concrete that would hold up against Lawson's explanations and department politics, and she needed it before tonight's operation. That afternoon, Sarah made an excuse to return to the precinct early, leaving Lawson to continue surveillance. She headed straight for the evidence room, Max at her side. The clerk on duty, a veteran named Rodriguez, looked up as she entered. "Lieutenant, what do you need?" "I need to see evidence from a Savannah case. 3 years ago, Detective Derek Lawson, drug seizure, 50 kilos of cocaine." Rodriguez pulled up the database. "That's Savannah jurisdiction. We wouldn't have their physical evidence here." "I know, but the case went to trial in federal court. They would have transferred samples for testing. Can you check the federal evidence logs?" Rodriguez frowned but typed the query. "Yeah, here it is. Lab received samples for testing. 48 kilos accounted for. Original seizure report says 50. Rodriguez's frown deepened. Could be a weighing discrepancy. Happens sometimes when you account for packaging. Can you pull up the original photos from the scene?" It took 10 minutes, but Rodriguez found them. Crime scene photos showing stacks of cocaine bricks, neatly arranged for documentation. Sarah counted them carefully. 50 bricks, each marked as 1 kilo. "Print these for me," she said. "Lieutenant, what's this about?" "Just following up on some details. Need to be thorough." Rodriguez printed the photos, handing them over with a concerned look. "Be careful, Collins. Evidence discrepancies can get messy." "I know." Sarah took the photos to her desk, spreading them out. 50 bricks in the photos. 48 in the final evidence log. 2 missing, worth roughly $200,000 on the street. The same amount Lawson had deposited into his accounts over 2 years. Max sat beside her, his head resting on her leg. Sarah ran her hand through his fur, feeling the steady strength of him. "We've got him," she whispered. "We just need one more piece." Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Stop now! Last warning, you're putting yourself in danger." Sarah's pulse spiked. She looked around the bullpen, scanning faces. Who was sending these messages? Who was protecting Lawson? She typed back, "Who are you?" This time, a response came. "Someone trying to keep you alive. Drop this investigation." Sarah's hands clenched around the phone. "I can't do that." "Then you're a fool. Lawson isn't working alone. You go after him. You go after people who won't hesitate to eliminate a problem." Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked down at Max, who stared back at her with those clear, fearless eyes. She typed, "Then help me. Give me something I can use." A long pause. Then, "Check evidence log 47S from 2 years ago. Weapons seizure. The serial numbers don't match trial documentation. 1 gun is still missing. Lawson kept it." Sarah's heart hammered. "Where is it?" "His apartment. Safe in the bedroom closet. Combination is his badge number backwards." "How do you know this?" "Because I helped him hide it, and I've regretted it every day since." Sarah stared at the screen, her mind reeling. Someone inside the department, someone who'd been part of Lawson's operation, was trying to help her. "Who are you?" she typed again. "It doesn't matter. Just get the evidence before tonight, and be careful. Lawson suspects you know something." The messages stopped. Sarah sat in silence, the weight of the information pressing down on her. She had evidence of financial misconduct. She had testimony from an anonymous insider. And now she had a location for physical proof, a weapon Lawson had stolen and kept, but getting it meant breaking into his apartment, an illegal search that could destroy any case she tried to build, unless she had probable cause. Sarah pulled up Lawson's address, cross-referencing it with the weapon seizure report. The missing gun was a Glock 19, serial number filed off, but with a distinctive modification, a custom trigger assembly that made it traceable. If she could prove that gun was in Lawson's possession, everything else would follow. The financial records, the missing evidence, the witness intimidation, it would all come together, but she'd need to move fast. The operation tonight was at 11 p.m. She had 6 hours. Sarah looked down at Max. Ready to do some real police work? Max's tail wagged, his eyes bright. Sarah grabbed her jacket and headed for the door, the evidence photos tucked under her arm. She pulled out her phone and dialed Morrison's number. "Sir, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Collins, I'm in the middle of Operation Prep. It's about Derek Lawson. I have evidence that he's dirty." Silence on the other end. Then, "My office. Now." Sarah drove across town, her hands tight on the wheel, Max alert in the passenger seat. This was it. Everything came down to the next few hours. When she reached Morrison's office, she found him waiting with 2 internal affairs investigators. She recognized one, Detective Linda Marsh, known for being thorough and incorruptible. "Talk," Morrison said, his expression grave. Sarah laid out everything. The evidence discrepancies, the financial deposits, the missing witnesses, the anonymous tip about the weapon. She showed them the photos, the logs, the encrypted documents. Morrison's face grew darker with each revelation. When she finished, he looked at Marsh. "Can we get a warrant?" Marsh nodded. "With this information, yes. But it'll take time. Judges don't like issuing warrants against police officers without ironclad cause." "How long?" 3, maybe 4 hours. Morrison checked his watch. "The operation starts in 5. We don't have time." "Then we postpone the operation," Sarah said. "We arrest Lawson now, search his apartment, secure the evidence. And if you're wrong?" Morrison's voice was hard. "If this is all circumstantial and Lawson is clean, we've blown a major operation and destroyed a detective's career based on a hunch. It's not a hunch. It's evidence. It's enough to investigate. It's not enough to arrest." Sarah's frustration boiled over. "Sir, if Lawson is working with Caruso, tonight's tip could be a setup. We could be walking into an ambush." Morrison stood, pacing behind his desk. "Or it could be legitimate and we're about to shut down a major trafficking operation." He stopped, facing her. "Here's what we're going to do. The operation proceeds as planned, but you and Lawson are off the entry team. You'll provide perimeter support with Max. Marsh will move forward with the warrant, and we'll execute it on Lawson's apartment the moment this operation concludes. If we find that weapon, we arrest him immediately." "And if something happens tonight? If people get hurt because Lawson set us up?" Morrison's expression softened. "That's why you and Max will be out there. If anything feels wrong, you signal and we abort. I trust your instincts, Collins, and I trust your dog." Sarah wanted to argue, but she saw the calculation in Morrison's eyes. He was trying to balance justice with caution to protect both the operation and his people. "Yes, sir," she said finally. As she left the office, Marsh caught up with her in the hallway. "Lieutenant, off the record, be very careful tonight. If Lawson is as dirty as your evidence suggests, he's cornered. And cornered animals are dangerous." Sarah nodded. "I know." She walked back to her car, Max beside her. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. 6 hours until the operation, 6 hours to either prove Lawson's guilt or watch everything fall apart. Sarah looked down at Max, who stared back at her with absolute trust. "We're going to finish this," she promised, "one way or another." The staging area for the operation was a vacant lot, 3 blocks from the airport shipping facility. Unmarked vehicles filled the space, officers checking weapons and equipment under portable floodlights. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, and tension hung thick over the assembled team. Sarah stood near her sedan, watching the preparations. Max sat at her side, his attention fixed on the activity around them. Lawson was across the lot, talking with two federal agents, his posture relaxed, confident. Morrison approached, his face grim. "Collins, you and Max have the north perimeter. If anything tries to leave through that fence line, you intercept, but stay out of the main action unless I call you in." "Understood." Sarah's hand moved to Max's head, steadying herself. "Sir, has the warrant come through?" "Marsh is working on it. Should have it within the hour. As soon as we wrap here, we move on Lawson's apartment." "And if the operation goes wrong?" Morrison's jaw tightened. "Then we deal with it. But I need you focused. Watch for anything unusual. Trust your instincts." He walked away, leaving Sarah alone with her doubts. She checked her watch. 10:45 p.m. 15 minutes until the supposed shipment arrived. Lawson detached himself from the federal agents and headed toward her. Max's body tensed immediately, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "Hey!" Lawson said, stopping a few feet away. "Morrison told me we're on perimeter duty. Seems like a waste of your skills." "Orders are orders." "Yeah, but I thought with Max's nose, we'd be on the entry team. He could clear rooms faster than anyone." Sarah studied him, looking for tells. "Morrison wants us as backup. Probably smart, given how the dog feels about you." Lawson's smile was tight. "Still holding that against me, huh?" "Max doesn't hold grudges. He reacts to threats. So I'm a threat now? You tell me, Derek." For a moment, something dangerous flashed in Lawson's eyes. Then he laughed, the sound forced. "You're really committed to this theory, aren't you? That I'm some kind of dirty cop?" Sarah didn't flinch. "I'm committed to the truth." "The truth." Lawson stepped closer, and Max's growl deepened. "You want the truth? Fine. I made mistakes in Savannah. Small stuff. Evidence documentation, report timing. Nothing criminal, just sloppy work. That's why Internal Affairs looked at me. But I cleaned it up, got my act together. And now I'm here, trying to do good work, and you're treating me like a suspect because your dog doesn't like me." His delivery was smooth, practiced. If Sarah hadn't seen the evidence, she might have believed him. "If that's all it was," she said quietly, "then you have nothing to worry about." Lawson's expression hardened. "Except I do, because you're poisoning people against me. I can see it. The way Morrison looks at me now, the way other officers keep their distance. You're destroying my reputation based on nothing, not nothing, evidence." "What evidence? Some clerical errors from 3 years ago?" Sarah held his gaze. "We'll find out soon enough." Lawson took another step forward. Max lunged, barking sharply, his teeth bared. Sarah held the leash tight, but let Max maintain his position, a clear barrier between her and Lawson. "Control your dog, Lieutenant," Lawson said, his voice low and dangerous. "He's doing exactly what he's trained to do, protecting me from threats." "I'm not a threat." "Then prove it. Tonight, when this operation goes down, prove that you're here for the right reasons." Lawson stared at her for a long moment, something cold and calculating in his expression. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Sarah exhaled slowly, her heart pounding. Max pressed against her leg, his warmth grounding her. "Good boy," she whispered. "We're almost there." At 11 p.m., the team moved into position. Sarah and Max took their spot along the north fence line, hidden in shadows behind a stack of shipping containers. From here, she could see the facility's main entrance and the loading dock, where the shipment was supposed to arrive. The lot was quiet, only a few security lights casting yellow pools across the pavement. No movement, no vehicles, nothing suspicious. Sarah's radio crackled. "All units, stand by. We have eyes on a vehicle approaching from the east." She raised her binoculars. A white delivery truck turned into the lot, moving slowly toward the loading dock. Two men sat in the cab, their faces obscured by the glare of headlights. "That's our target," Morrison's voice came through the radio. "Entry team, prepare to move on my signal." Sarah watched as the truck backed up to the dock. The driver climbed out, unlocking the rear doors. The passenger remained in the cab, scanning the area. Something felt wrong. The setup was too clean, too obvious. Sarah's instincts screamed at her, the same instincts that had kept her alive through 7 years of dangerous work. "Max," she whispered. "Search." Max's nose went up, testing the air. His body tensed, head swiveling toward the southeast corner of the lot, away from the truck. Sarah followed his gaze. Movement in the shadows, barely visible. Multiple figures, positioned in the darkness beyond the fence line. Her blood ran cold. It was an ambush. "All units, abort!" Sarah shouted into her radio. "It's a trap! Southeast corner, multiple hostiles!" Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit up the night as the hidden figures opened fire on the entry team. Officers scattered, diving for cover behind vehicles and containers. The truck's driver pulled a weapon, firing toward Morrison's position. Chaos exploded across the lot. Sarah drew her sidearm, her training taking over. "Max, cover!" The dog dropped low, staying close to her legs as Sarah moved along the fence line, trying to get a better angle on the shooters. Her radio crackled with overlapping voices, calls for backup, officers reporting injuries, Morrison trying to coordinate a response. Through the noise, she heard Lawson's voice. "I've got a runner heading north, in pursuit." Sarah's stomach dropped. The north perimeter was her position. If someone was running, they'd be coming straight toward her. She took cover behind a container, Max at her side, both of them watching the darkness. Footsteps pounded against pavement, getting closer. A figure burst into view, not a suspect, but Lawson himself, his weapon drawn. "Collins!" he shouted. "Suspect went through the fence. We need to—" Max exploded forward, barking furiously. Sarah's instinct screamed at her. There was no suspect. Lawson was lying. "Max, hold!" she commanded, and the dog stopped. But his focus stayed locked on Lawson. Lawson raised his weapon, pointing it not at the fence line, but at Sarah. "Call off your dog! Now!" Time seemed to slow. Sarah's own weapon came up, training taking over. "Derek, what are you doing?" "Surviving." His face was twisted with something between rage and desperation. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you? Had to keep digging, had to trust that damn dog." "Put the weapon down." "I can't. You know too much. You've got evidence, testimony. If you live through tonight, I'm done." Sarah's mind raced, calculating angles, distances, options. Max was coiled tight, ready to attack on her command. But Lawson had his weapon trained on her center mass. If he fired, she'd be dead before Max could reach him. "The tip was fake," she said, buying time. "You set up the ambush. Why?" "Because Caruso wanted his competition eliminated. The task force was getting too close to his real operation. This was supposed to take out the federal agents, scatter the investigation. And you were supposed to be inside with the entry team, not out here where you could see it coming. Morrison changed the assignments." "Yeah, bad luck for both of us." Lawson's finger moved toward the trigger. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I really am. But I've got too much invested to let you destroy it." Max's growl was continuous now, a promise of violence. "You won't make it out of here," Sarah said. "There are officers everywhere. You shoot me, they'll know it was you. Not if I say you were hit in the crossfire. Chaos of the ambush, bullets flying everywhere. Tragic accident." His expression hardened. "Last chance. Call off the dog and drop your weapon. I'll make it quick." Sarah's grip tightened on her gun. She couldn't drop it, couldn't call off Max. Lawson would kill them both either way. "Max," she said quietly, "attack!" Max launched forward like a missile. Lawson swung his weapon toward the dog, firing. The shot went wide as 70 pounds of Belgian Malinois slammed into his chest, driving him backward. His weapon flew from his hand, skittering across the pavement. Sarah moved, closing the distance. Lawson tried to fight, throwing Max off, reaching for his backup piece. Sarah kicked it away, her weapon aimed at his head. "Don't move." Lawson froze, his hands raised. Max circled back, positioning himself between Sarah and Lawson, teeth bared, ready to attack again if needed. "It's over, Derek," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "You're done." Lawson laughed, bitter and defeated. "You think this ends with me? Caruso has people everywhere, in the department, in the courts. You'll never touch him." "Maybe not tonight, but we'll get him eventually. That's how this works." Footsteps pounded toward them. Morrison appeared, weapon drawn, 2 officers behind him. He took in the scene, Lawson on the ground, Sarah standing over him, Max alert and ready. "Collins, report. Detective Lawson just attempted to murder me to cover his involvement with Vincent Caruso. He admitted to setting up the ambush, feeding intelligence to Caruso's organization." Max stopped him. Morrison's expression went from shock to fury. "Lawson, you're under arrest. Conspiracy, attempted murder of a police officer, corruption." He nodded to the officers. "Take him." They pulled Lawson to his feet, cuffing him roughly. As they led him away, he looked back at Sarah, his expression empty. "You should have trusted the system," he said. "Should have let internal affairs handle it." "The system protected you twice," Sarah replied. Max didn't. Lawson was gone, swallowed by the chaos of the ongoing operation. The gunfire had stopped, but sirens wailed in the distance. Sarah holstered her weapon, her hands shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. Morrison approached, his face grave. "You saved lives tonight, Collins. If you hadn't spotted that ambush, it was Max. He sensed something wrong before I did." Morrison looked down at the dog, who sat calmly now, his job complete. "That dog deserves a medal. He deserves a steak and a good night's sleep. He'll get both, but first," Morrison pulled out his radio. "Marsh, what's the status on that warrant?" The radio crackled. "Just came through, Captain. We're at Lawson's apartment now, searching the premises. Keep me updated." 20 minutes later, the call came through. Marsh's voice was triumphant. "We found it. Glock 19, modified trigger, hidden in a safe exactly where Collins said it would be. Serial number matches the evidence log from the Savannah seizure. We've got him." Morrison nodded slowly. "Bag it, tag it, and secure everything in that apartment. This needs to be airtight." He looked at Sarah. "You did good work, real good work, but you took a hell of a risk going after a fellow officer." "He wasn't an officer. Not anymore. He was a criminal who happened to wear a badge. Still, there'll be questions, investigations. Internal affairs will want to interview you, Max, everyone involved. It's going to get messy." "I know." Morrison's expression softened. "For what it's worth, I believe you did the right thing, and I'll make sure everyone else knows it too." He walked away, leaving Sarah alone with Max. She sank down onto a concrete barrier, exhaustion washing over her. Max pressed against her side, and she wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his fur. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life. Again." Max's tail wagged gently, his body warm and solid against her. Around them the operation wound down. Officers secured the scene. Paramedics tended to the wounded, and the suspects from the ambush were loaded into transport vehicles. The night air was cold, but Sarah barely felt it. She thought about Lawson, how he'd smiled when he walked back into the briefing room, how he'd tried to manipulate her into doubting herself and Max, how he'd almost gotten away with it, but he hadn't, because Max had known from the first moment, had sensed the corruption, the danger, the lie. Sarah looked down at her partner, who stared back at her with those clear, unwavering eyes. "I'll never doubt you again," she promised. "Never." Max licked her hand once, a simple gesture of affection and trust. And in that moment, sitting in the aftermath of chaos, Sarah Collins understood something fundamental. The bond between her and Max wasn't just professional. It was deeper than training, stronger than protocol. It was family, and family never lied. 3 days after the ambush, Sarah sat in a conference room at Atlanta Police Headquarters, facing a panel of 3 internal affairs investigators. Max lay beneath the table at her feet, his presence a steady anchor in what had been 72 hours of interrogations, depositions, and sleepless nights. Detective Linda Marsh sat at the head of the table, a stack of folders in front of her. To her left was Deputy Chief Harrison, a stern woman in her 50s with grey hair pulled back in a tight bun. To her right, a federal prosecutor named James Chen, who'd flown in from D.C. specifically for this case. "Lieutenant Collins," Marsh began, her voice formal but not unkind, "we've reviewed your statement, the physical evidence recovered from Detective Lawson's apartment, and the testimony of the officers present during the operation. We've also interviewed Detective Lawson extensively." Sarah kept her expression neutral. And you were right about everything." Marsh opened the top folder, revealing photos of the modified Glock recovered from Lawson's safe. The weapon matches the serial number from the Savannah evidence log. Ballistics confirmed it was used in 2 unsolved homicides, both witnesses who were scheduled to testify against Vincent Caruso's organization. Sarah's stomach tightened. She'd suspected Lawson was dirty, but murder was a different level entirely. Deputy Chief Harrison leaned forward. "Lawson has agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's provided names, dates, financial records, everything. His testimony will help us dismantle Caruso's entire network." "How long was he working for Caruso?" Sarah asked. 4 years, Chen replied. "It started in Savannah with small favors, losing evidence, altering reports. By the time he left, he was orchestrating witness disappearances and coordinating shipments. The Atlanta transfer was Caruso's idea. They needed someone inside the task force to protect their operations here." Sarah felt a wave of anger. 4 years. How many cases had been compromised? How many criminals had walked free because of Lawson's corruption? "What happens now?" she asked. Marsh closed the folder. "Lawson will be prosecuted on federal charges: corruption, conspiracy, accessory to murder. He's looking at 20 to 30 years minimum. Caruso and his associates are being rounded up as we speak. The FBI has taken over the investigation." "And the department?" Deputy Chief Harrison's expression hardened. "We're conducting a full audit of every case Lawson touched in the past 7 years. Any convictions that relied on his testimony are being reviewed for potential appeals. It's going to be a nightmare, but it's necessary." "What about the officers who closed his internal affairs investigations?" Sarah pressed. "Someone protected him. Twice." Harrison nodded grimly. "We're looking into that. If there was corruption in IA, we'll root it out. You have my word." Chen spoke up, his voice measured. "Lieutenant Collins, on behalf of the federal government, I want to thank you for your work on this case. Your instincts and persistence prevented a catastrophic breach of law enforcement integrity. Without you and Max, Lawson would still be operating, and more lives would have been lost." Sarah reached down, her hand finding Max's head beneath the table. "Max deserves the credit. He knew from the beginning." "Yes," Marsh said, a slight smile crossing her face. "About that, the department would like to formally recognize Max's contribution. We're recommending him for the Medal of Valor, the first K-9 officer to receive it in Atlanta's history." Sarah's throat tightened with emotion. "He'd be honored. We both are." "There's one more thing." Harrison pulled a document from her folder. "Captain Morrison has recommended you for promotion to captain, heading a new unit focused on internal corruption investigations. You'd have full authority to investigate any officer, any case, Any time. We need someone we can trust to make sure this never happens again. Sarah stared at the document, her mind reeling. A promotion, a new unit. More responsibility, more pressure, but also more power to protect the integrity of the badge she wore. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Take your time," Harrison said, "but not too much. We need good people in positions of authority, Collins. People who can't be bought or intimidated. People like you." The meeting concluded 20 minutes later. Sarah walked out of the conference room, Max at her side, feeling the weight of the past few days finally settling on her shoulders. In the hallway, Morrison waited. He looked tired, older than he had a week ago. The revelation about Lawson had hit him hard. Lawson had been his hire, his responsibility. "Captain," Sarah said. Morrison straightened. "I owe you an apology, Collins. I should have listened when you first raised concerns. Should have trusted your instincts and Max's judgment. Instead, I made you jump through hoops while a killer walked free in our precinct. You were protecting the integrity of the investigation. I understand that. Still, people could have died because I hesitated." He looked down at Max. "Your partner's smarter than most of the humans I work with." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "He has his moments." Morrison's expression grew serious. "Are you going to take the promotion?" "I don't know yet. It's a lot to consider." "It is, but you'd be good at it, and we need good people watching the watchers." He paused. "Whatever you decide, I want you to know you have my full support, always." "Thank you, sir." Morrison nodded and walked away, leaving Sarah alone in the hallway with Max. She looked down at her partner, who stared back at her with patient, knowing eyes. "What do you think, boy? Ready for a new challenge?" Max's tail wagged once. "Yeah," Sarah murmured. "Me too." That evening, Sarah drove to Piedmont Park, one of Max's favorite places. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Families walked along the paths, children played on the grass, and the city felt almost peaceful. She let Max off his leash in the designated dog area, watching as he ran with the pure joy of a dog who'd spent too many days in tense, dangerous situations. He chased a tennis ball, played with a golden retriever puppy, and rolled in the grass with complete abandon. Sarah sat on a bench, her phone in her hand. She'd received dozens of messages over the past few days, colleagues offering congratulations, reporters requesting interviews, and one from an unknown number that simply said, "Thank you for having the courage to do what was right." She suspected it was from the anonymous informant who'd helped her find the evidence in Lawson's apartment. Whoever they were, they'd taken a huge risk. Sarah hoped they'd found some peace now that the truth was out. Her phone buzzed with a new message, this one from Detective Marsh. "Lawson, formally arraigned today, pled guilty to all charges, sentencing in 6 weeks. Caruso arrested in Savannah. Network is crumbling. You did it." Sarah closed her eyes, letting the relief wash over her. It was done. Justice had been served. Max returned, panting happily, and dropped a slobbery tennis ball at her feet. She picked it up and threw it, watching him race after it with boundless energy. 7 years. They'd been partners for 7 years, and in that time, Max had never failed her, not once. He'd found drugs that X-rays missed. He'd detected bombs before they detonated. He'd tracked suspects through impossible terrain. He'd protected her from threats she hadn't even seen coming. And when everyone else had been fooled by Derek Lawson's charm and credentials, Max had known the truth. Because Max didn't care about badges or reputations or political complications. He cared about what was real, what was true, what was right. Sarah thought about the promotion offer. Captain, a new unit, the power to root out corruption wherever it hid. It was exactly the kind of work she joined the force to do. But it would mean changes. Less fieldwork, more administrative responsibilities. Would Max still be her partner, or would he be reassigned to another handler? The thought made her chest ache. She couldn't imagine doing this job without him. Max returned with the ball again, dropping it at her feet and sitting patiently. Sarah reached down, scratching behind his ears. "What do you say, boy? Think we can handle being captains?" Max's tongue lolled out in what looked like a grin. "Yeah, I think so too." 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in full-dress uniform in the precinct's main assembly hall. The room was packed. Officers, federal agents, city officials, and media representatives. Max stood beside her, wearing a formal K9 vest with his badge prominently displayed. Deputy Chief Harrison stepped to the podium, her voice carrying through the speakers. "Today, we gather to recognize extraordinary service and bravery. Lieutenant Sarah Collins and K9 Officer Max have exemplified the highest standards of law enforcement, demonstrating courage, integrity, and unwavering commitment to justice." Sarah kept her eyes forward, her hand resting on Max's head. Through their investigation and actions, they uncovered a corruption network that threatened the very foundation of our department. They faced danger without hesitation, trusted their instincts when others doubted, and ultimately saved lives through their dedication to the truth. Harrison paused, looking directly at Sarah. "It is my honor to present Lieutenant Sarah Collins with a commendation for distinguished service and to announce her promotion to captain, effective immediately." Applause filled the room. Sarah stepped forward as Harrison pinned the captain's bars to her uniform. She felt the weight of them, the responsibility they represented. "And now," Harrison continued, "for the first time in Atlanta Police Department history, we present the Medal of Valor to a K9 officer. Max, through his exceptional instincts and unwavering dedication, identified a threat that human officers missed. He protected his handler, assisted in apprehending a dangerous criminal, and proved beyond doubt that our K9 unit represents the absolute best of what we stand for." Harrison knelt down, carefully attaching the medal to Max's vest. Max sat perfectly still, dignified and calm. The room erupted in applause again, louder this time. Officers stood, whistling and cheering. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as she looked down at Max, who glanced up at her with those clear, honest eyes. "Good boy," she whispered. "The very best boy." After the ceremony, Sarah stood in the reception area, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about her new unit. Max remained at her side, patiently tolerating the attention from officers who wanted to pet the legendary dog who'd brought down a corrupt detective. Morrison approached, a rare smile on his face. "Captain Collins has a nice ring to it." "It does," Sarah admitted. "Still getting used to it, though." "You'll grow into it. You always do." He looked down at Max. "So, I have to ask, is Max staying with you in the new unit, or will he be reassigned?" Sarah's hand moved protectively to Max's head. "He's staying with me. Non-negotiable." Morrison chuckled. "I figured as much." "Good. You two are a hell of a team. Would be criminal to split you up." "Yes, it would." As Morrison walked away, a young officer approached, a rookie Sarah didn't recognize. He looked nervous, his uniform still crisp and new. "Captain Collins, I'm Officer Martinez. I just wanted to say what you did, standing up to corruption even when it was another cop. That's why I joined the force. To work with people like you." Sarah felt the weight of his words, the responsibility of being an example to others. "Thank you, Martinez. Just remember, the badge means nothing if we don't have integrity. If you ever see something wrong, speak up. Don't let rank or politics silence you." "Yes, ma'am, I won't." He walked away, and Sarah felt a sense of hope. Maybe they could fix this. Maybe they could rebuild the trust that Lawson and others like him had broken. The reception wound down as the afternoon faded into evening. Sarah finally escaped, walking out to her car with Max. The parking lot was nearly empty, the city settling into its evening rhythm. She opened the back door for Max, who jumped in and settled into his spot. Before closing the door, Sarah leaned in, wrapping her arms around him. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said quietly. "You're more than my partner. You're my family." Max's tail wagged, thumping against the seat. Sarah closed the door and climbed into the driver's seat. As she started the engine, she caught sight of Max in the rearview mirror. He looked content, relaxed in a way he hadn't been since Lawson had walked back into their lives. Her phone buzzed one last time. A message from Deputy Chief Harrison. "First case for your new unit just came in. Detective in narcotics with suspicious bank deposits. Report Monday morning. Welcome to the fight, Captain." Sarah smiled, a fierce determination settling in her chest. This was what she was meant to do. Root out corruption. Protect the integrity of the badge. Make sure people like Lawson never got the chance to betray their oath. And she wouldn't be doing it alone. She had Max, whose instincts had never failed. She had Morrison's support. She had a department full of good officers who wanted to do the right thing. They could do this. They would do this. Sarah pulled out of the parking lot, heading home. The city lights flickered to life around her, Atlanta transforming from day to night. In the back seat, Max rested his head on his paws, his medal glinting in the passing streetlights. "Ready for the next one, boy?" Sarah asked. Max's ears perked up, and in the mirror, Sarah saw his tail wag. "Yeah," she said softly, a smile crossing her face. "Me too." Because the truth was simple. As long as Sarah Collins had Max by her side, no corruption could hide. No criminal could escape justice. No lie could survive. The dog had spoken from the very beginning. He'd barked at Derek Lawson, warned Sarah of the danger, refused to back down even when everyone doubted. And in the end, the dog had been right. He always was.